In the low country where moss hangs like old secrets and a river drags more names than driftwood, there's a word that never made it into the tourist brochures: increase. It was tidy on paper, filthy in practice, and it turned a person's future into someone else's forecast. Tonight, we are going inside the rooms that never made the tours, where ledgers ate people whole and called it profit. If this is your first time with us, tell me where you're watching from, and if you can handle stories' official history preferred to Misfiled, subscribe now. We are opening a door that's been shut on purpose. The first sound is not screaming. It's scratching, the nib of a pen cutting an economy into skin. Columns, totals, notes in a careful hand, likely. Prime, fancy. And that word again, increase. Numbers don't blush. Men did not, here. They called them nurseries, farms, lying in rooms, gentle names for a machine with a single purpose: force the future to show up on schedule. The plan was simple because cruelty often is. Enslave women, control their bodies, predict and maximize births, sell surplus children into the interstate trade. Repeat. Dress it up with columns and contracts until it felt respectable in daylight. If you listen closely, you can hear the business model breathing. A planter's accountant opens a red ledger: assets, liabilities, expected yield. Cotton fields on one page, wombs on the next. In the margins, tiny math: payback period, 12 years. Projected issue, 4 to 6. Issue, like a dividend. Children as payouts. The pen does not hesitate. They had language for everything except mercy. Breeder. For a woman they planned to force into pregnancies in sequence. Buck. For a man they meant to treat like rent-a-body. Likely. For someone whose youth made her profitable. Sound. For someone whose body had survived a previous pregnancy and would be made to do it again. The words weren't just insults. They were prices. Listen for the lullabies in the background. They are not tender. They are transactional. The weirdest, darkest brilliance of the system was that it pretended to be natural. Planters bragged in letters about natural increase, as if the babies appeared by weather. But nothing about it was natural, only orchestrated. Calendars kept by overseers, pairings scheduled like plowing, punishments coded as discipline, rewards doled as crumbs. Profit demanded predictability. Predictability demanded control. Control demanded violence behind closed doors. You want to see the machine? Follow the paper. Start in a bank office 2 blocks off the courthouse square. The wallpaper is tasteful. The product is terror. A clerk, Miriam, 19, fast with figures, slow to blink, tallies a mortgage, land, tools, 24 hands, and a line item the loan officer reads without chewing: increase expected. He uses that phrase the way other men say rain in April. Safe. Predictable. He pencils a neat rate reduction because unborn babies reduce risk. He calls it prudence. She calls it what it is inside her head and never out loud. Cross the street to the sheriff's desk. He holds a notice from a trader in Richmond, asking for Virginia girls, seasoned, with issue likely, as if the Shenandoah were an orchard. In the corner of the page, a wax stamp bears an eagle that does not know what it's endorsing. The sheriff files it under commerce, because there isn't a folder for horror we normalized. Walk half a mile to a big house whose columns look like they're praying. In a back room, not on the tour, a matron keeps a lying-in book. It is neat as a hymn, dates of last courses, her words, not mine, instances of small fever, the names of midwives called and the children handed over within a week because attachment impedes efficiency. She never writes the word mother. She writes hand. She never writes the word rape. She writes visit. She never writes the word stolen. She writes placed. There's a cost curve for everything here, even grief. Another room, lower ceiling, worse air. They call it the nursery. The floorboards remember more than the walls will admit. Bed ticks, burlap sacks stuffed with straw, lined in 2 uneven rows. On a shelf, 2 bottles, not medicine so much as management, one for pain, the other for quiet. Aunt Hester, a midwife with hands like soft iron, moves between beds measuring breath, not profit. She keeps her own book, hidden, because the official record prefers its stories in someone else's hand. In Hester's book there are names, not numbers, and tiny marks where she sang even when no one asked her to. The planters weren't stupid, they were strategic. A woman who had birthed before was proven, and thus insured. Yes, insured. Policies written by men with respectable mustache in northern offices, wagering on whether a child would make it to a certain age, whether a woman would recover fast enough to be scheduled again. Premiums adjusted like weather vanes when rumors of fever swept a county. The actuarial tables never wrote the word crime. They wrote exposure. Here's how retention worked, not the viewer kind, the cruel kind. Keep people on the same plantation through pregnancies, less risk, less flight. Pair them with partners not of their choosing, withholding permission papers if they dared love across property lines. Encourage unions with candy and days off, cheap bribery so owners could pretend they wanted it. If you want your stomach to turn, read a planter's letter praising a woman for taking to her duty, as if consent could be coerced into existence by a pat on the head and a needle of indigo cloth. And when births came, the calendar was as important as the cradle. Babies timed to the market cycle fetched more. Born in winter. Weaned by fall meant ready for sale by the spring auctions in New Orleans or Mobile, when riverboats ran fat with cotton money. The ledger turned swaddling into scheduling, lullabies into logistics. Some planters specialized. They bragged about their nurseries the way horsemen brag about bloodlines, writing to each other with recipes of evil. This girl throws twins, that one breeds true, this boy's shoulders speak of sourness. The words throws and breeds don't belong to humans. They use them anyway. Because once a price tag is attached, language goes feral. Let's talk margins. A girl purchased at 16 for $700 could, under this nightmare math, yield 4 to 8 increase before age 30. Sold individually at $400 to $800, a child's price could, on paper, turn a human life into a revenue stream that exceeded the original investment. That's how they taught themselves to sleep. They called a person a return. They called coercion a strategy. They called their victims capital. Do not let the Polish fool you. The machine needed terror to keep it running. On Saturday evenings, before Sunday rest, an overseer convened examinations, euphemism for violations of privacy, body, dignity. Women lined up, eyes on the floorboards, while a man with dirty fingernails pretended to be a physician. Sound, he muttered for the healthy, lazy for the sick, stubborn for the traumatized, barren for those who hadn't produced on schedule. Each word was a sentence, sometimes literal. The lash hung on a peg like punctuation. We are telling this like a ghost story because the ghosts deserve to be heard. They haunt ledgers and lullabies, dooryards, and docks. Their names didn't make it into the minutes of the meeting. We will make room for them here. Remember this number. Thousands, year after year, pulled from Upper South to Deep South in a forced migration so large they called it the Second Middle Passage. Virginia to Louisiana, Maryland to Mississippi. Traders marketed homebred like jewelers talk about clarity. The city bragged about its markets. They were tourist attractions for men who measured masculinity in bids. In back rooms off the block, the fancy trade targeted girls who would be forced to serve in different ways. The archive calls it sex work. It wasn't. It was theft of body, of time, of choice. You can hear the auctioneer from here. He has a voice trained to cut through swamp heat. Who'll give me? And everything human disappears beneath the shout. A woman holds a child and the auctioneer calls it bundle, as if affection were inventory. A man begs to keep his family together and they call it inconvenient. Convenient is what you can sell twice. Convenient is what fits into a contract. Convenient is never the truth. Inside the nursery, the arithmetic looks different. Not money, minutes. How many minutes can Aunt Hester keep a newborn on the breast before the matron decides weaning should be accelerated for efficiencies? How many minutes until the man with the ledger arrives to remind everyone that weeping does not alter schedules? Hester bends the schedule where she can. She swaps infants among women who still have milk. She hums new names into tiny ears because names are armor. She writes those names into her hidden book even when the official ledger writes only boy or girl and a price. The system presented itself as respectable because it wore paperwork like pearls. Contracts between planters to loan men out as studs. Agreements for lying in care where a woman would be housed through pregnancy, then returned to her owner with a healthy child and a bill. Mortgages where the collateral was all increase of the female Negroes named herein. Deeds that transferred not just people, but their unborn children as pre-sold futures. Courts that upheld those deeds with opinions written in polite Latin that smelled like old leather and new harm. In one county, a judge wrote that offspring follow the condition of the mother, meaning if she is enslaved, so are they. The phrase is neat, cruel, and core to the machine. Turn one enslaved life into a factory of enslaved lives, generation compounding generation, grief accruing interest. It is tempting to look away because the mechanics are monstrous. Do not. The mechanics are the point. The horror was not only the whip, it was the worksheet. Not only the silence, the signature. This was a system designed to make money from forced births, and it did. It built houses with columns and banks with marble floors. It sent sons to Europe to learn manners and daughters to finishing schools to learn how to look away gracefully. Inside those houses you'll find a slim journal on a side table. In it are the recipes for harvest dinners and a list titled Lying in Basket. Linen, soap, sugar water, ribbon. The matron writes, red ribbon for those to be kept, blue for those to be placed. She doesn't explain placed. She doesn't need to. Everyone in that house knows the route and the price. The ribbon drawer sticks sometimes. Maybe the wood swells with humidity. Maybe something else swells. Conscience, grief, the river outside. On Sunday mornings, planters went to church and fed words to heaven while the nursery fed infants to silence. Sermons about providence floated above rooms where women were told their bodies served a plan older than their names. Providence never signed a bill of sale. Men did. With good ink. There were resistances. Quiet. Daily. Dangerous. Women who took herbs with names nobody writes down now to delay what owners scheduled. Men who slipped away to be with the women they actually loved and not the women owners assigned. Midwives who refused to record stillbirths as losses and wrote "free" in tiny letters next to certain babies when they heard a rumor a cousin might run with that child north. Owners suspected sabotage when births slowed. Sometimes they were right. Hope is a saboteur with nimble hands. There were also planters who liked to tell themselves a different story because they needed to become the hero of their own harm. They wrote in diaries that they were kind, that they encouraged family life, that their people multiplied under their care. They called themselves patriarchs and their victims children. It is astonishing how much evil will fit inside a euphemism if you oil it with money and prayer. If you were standing in one of those rooms now, what would you hear? A baby's breath. A woman swallowing a scream because the matron doesn't like noise. The whisper of an old song that refuses to die. The river, telling on everyone. Emptiness leaves traces. Look at the gaps in plantation papers where names should be. Girl, 14. Woman, with child. Increase. The gaps are the ghosts. They press their hands against the glass of history and fog it with breath we will not ignore. We will follow one name, Dinah, and watch how 4 men write her into 4 different ledgers, each with a different story, none of them hers. We will stand in a counting shed where a man with clean nails explains why unborn children make excellent collateral, and we will watch him forget every lesson his mother ever taught him. We will open an insurance policy written far away that pretends distance is innocence. We will read an advertisement dressed in adjectives and silence. We will meet Aunt Hester again, and the ribbon drawer, and the river that remembers. The door is open now. On the other side are the rooms that built a region's wealth and called it destiny. It wasn't. It was design. Her name is Dinah. On paper, she appears 4 times in one season, and never the same way twice. In the Planter's Daybook, she's Dinah, age 18, likely, sound. Issue 1, stillborn. Put to house until spring. A line like a fence. No mother. No grief. Just weather and work and what's expected next. In the Trader's Circular, mailed upriver to men who read their crimes over coffee, she's a Virginia girl, comely, of good disposition, uncommonly hale, promised to breed. Promised? To whom? By whom? With what right? In the bank's mortgage schedule, she's a decimal, 1.0 of a person now, plus all increase. The clerk, Miriam, copies the clause with a steady hand and a sick stomach, said increase to be held as security until the debt be satisfied. She dots the I in increase too hard and the page freckles with ink. In the insurance policy written far away by men who have never touched red clay, she's a risk profile. Female, 18, seasoned, insured against mortality at delivery. Premium adjusted for prior stillbirth. The pen's nib hesitates only there, not out of pity, out of math. 4 documents, 4 stories, none of them hers. Dinah's actual story begins in a room with too little air and Aunt Hester's hands on her temples. Hester hums a low tune that sounds like prayer and instruction at once. Breathe, she says. You're not alone. On the mantel is the ribbon drawer. Red means keep, blue means place, the matron system for sorting living futures. Hester hates the drawer. When no one is watching, she pushes it shut with her hip like a door she refuses to walk through. The owner calls what comes next encouragement. He hands Dinah a slice of sugared ginger and speaks to her like an employer praising an apprentice. You'll be well kept, girl. We value increase. He believes value is kindness. The overseer calls what follows pairing. He writes 2 names on a slate not because love chose them, but because Yield did. He picks Ephraim, a man whose sorrow has been weaponized into compliance, and tells him, in front of others, visit. The word is gentle as a knife wrapped in velvet. Dinah has a sweetheart already, Josiah, a field hand whose hands smell like rope and rain. They meet where the fence dips near the bayou. They speak in syllables short as stolen minutes. They dream in the future tense and the whisper tense, the only tenses allowed. Hester teaches what she can afford to teach. Leaves that slow a woman's calendar. Seeds that turn the body's door to a latch for a little while. The lessons are dangerous because every interruption of the machine is an act of war. Hester keeps a book under a hearthstone, each page a map of survival and its costs. The matron thinks she runs the nursery. The ledger thinks it runs the world. Dinah's body does not belong to either of them. Still, every system pretends possession. Every night the doors lock. Every morning the doors open and call it routine. One rainstorm too loud to ignore, Dinah hides in the smokehouse with Josiah. The roof leaks in a rhythm that sounds like someone counting down. They promise nothing they can't keep, only that they will keep each other's names in their mouths when the world tries to wash them out. Josiah presses a small river stone into her palm. So you don't forget where you can throw this, if you need, he says. Water carries messages. That spring, the trader arrives early. His boots are clean. He is not. He looks at Dinah's face as if it were a window and at her hands as if they were handles. Prime, he decides. She'll fetch. The owner hesitates, only because he can do math. A girl of 18 is a bank account you don't close. You watch it compound. But he owes on a gin and the bank doesn't accept excuses, only increase or cash. He walks the trader out to the counting shed and pretends not to hear Dinah humming Hester's song to herself in a voice so steady it sounds like a vow. Miriam will see Dinah's name again in a pile of bills of sale, the ink still damp, the number tidy. She will miscopy one letter, on purpose, and then scratch it back to correctness as the manager clears his throat. Small rebellions live and die inside 4 square inches of paper. The river swells with April. It will carry cotton bales and human beings and rumor and maybe, if Dinah is lucky and Hester's book is right, a message tucked under barge plank, a name carved so small no one sees it but the water. The ribbon drawer sticks again. Hester closes it with her hip and prays the wood remembers the resistance. The counting shed is built like a lie, plain on the outside, complicated within. A factor from the city spreads papers on a table stained with grease and tobacco. He was born without fangs and grew them by practice. Capital needs to sweat, he says, meaning bodies need to produce. But collateral needs to breed, he adds, meaning women need to deliver on schedule. He calls the second sentence a best practice. The owner nods in the way men nod when they are being taught something monstrous that they pretend is math. The factor sketches a diagram. He labels the axes time and yield and dots the curve with boys, girls, twins, stillborn. He circles twins and grins as if the Lord himself invented arbitrage. Your note matures in 3 harvests, the factor says. You can pay in lint or flesh. Given the market, I advise flesh. It's not advice. It's a prophecy underwritten by hunger and the river schedule. Outside, men are weighed and women are measured the way you measure a barrel, not because it's accurate, because it's useful. The overseer writes sound and sullen and fair and stubborn. He writes increase likely next to 4 names with the neatness of a bookkeeper and the blindness of a storm. Miriam counts premiums in the bank office. Insurance men up north have a way of talking that makes murder sound like weather. We underwrite what we do not control, one writes in a letter. Mortality risk at delivery manageable if midwife experienced. He never writes midwife's name. Hester would spit if she saw the sentence. She doesn't. She is boiling water and fear. The trader returns with a grin and a crate of blue ribbon. The matron takes it and does not ask why there's more blue than red. She knows. The placing season is coming. Riverboats run fuller when the river runs high. Dinah cleans the hearth to avoid the eyes that are praise and inventory. The stone in her palm is a weight she welcomes. She sleeps with it warm against her skin and dreams of water with a current strong enough to drag the counting shed into the swamp and hold it there until it learns silence. At night, the machine shows its true face. Men with candles move like moths through the quarters, calling names softly as if softness could ever be innocence. Visit, they say, and the word leaves blisters. Windows are shuttered against the wind that wants to carry the sound away. When refusals come, and they do, because courage is not a rumor, punishment arrives dressed as discipline. Rations cut, privileges rescinded, the lash taken down from its peg like a sentence the wall has memorized. The overseer does not enjoy it, he tells himself. Enjoyment would make him a monster. Duty makes him a professional. Professionals sleep, monsters don't. He sleeps. Hester doesn't. There is a map no surveyor drew. It runs from field to nursery to smokehouse to fence dip to bayou trail to a hollow stump where Aunt Hester keeps bundles. Dried leaves wrapped in cloth and hope. Women follow the map in the dark and leave it exactly as they found it for the next pair of feet. The map is not made of land. It is made of decision. One night, Dinah finds Hester watching the ribbon drawer again. What would happen if we burned it? Dinah asks. The room holds its breath. Hester answers like a woman who knows the difference between fire that helps and fire that summons men with buckets and questions. Not yet, she says. But soon, child. Soon enough to matter. The factor writes a letter to a colleague praising the owner's forward-minded policy. He means the nursery. He calls it efficiency in reproduction. He does not use the word crime. He signs with a flourish and a coffee stain shaped like an eye. In the morning, a boy is born with a cry that sounds like torn cloth. The matron ties a blue ribbon and does not meet Hester's stare. Placed, she writes. Hester opens a book and writes another word next to his true one, return. It is not a plan. It is a prayer that pretends to be a promise so the prayer can stand up on its feet. By noon, the trader will offer a price for Dinah. By dusk, the owner will accept because numbers travel faster than blood. The counting shed exhales. The river inhales. Something sharp in the air takes root. The road to the depot is a string of small betrayals tied together with dust. They walk them in Coffles, iron cuffs linking wrist to wrist, words linking man to money, down a lane that used to be trees and is now a corridor of watching. Children press their faces between fence slats. Dogs whine. The wind fails to push the smell away. Traders call the column a drove, like hogs. The men and women inside it call it a lot of things that would set the traders' clothes on fire if words could be matches. Dinah is near the middle. The stone in her hand has been hidden in the hem of her dress by a stitch so clumsy it looks accidental. She puts the seam's roughness to her lips like a prayer bead. The trader tells a joke about riverboats. No one laughs except men who need to hear themselves make a sound that isn't what everyone else is hearing. On the platform, an advertisement curls in the damp. Just arrived. 4 prime girls of Virginia, 2 lads of excellent temper, a seamstress, a cook, and a superior fancy. The last word is a doorway to a room men have been building in their minds for a long time. It is painted delicate pink and paid for in currency and quiet. No one writes the word for what happens there, because polite men own dictionaries that don't include it. They say kept. They say comfort. The girls inside the ad know all the synonyms and none of them are accurate. At the depot, a whitewashed office pretending to be innocent holds a ledger pretending to be a list. Dinah's name is spelled right this time and wrong for the last time. The trader chews on a sprig of mint and complains about the price of hay. He's tired. The riverboat's late. He has more bodies than patience. He flips the book closed and goes to bully the stevedore. The book breathes without him. A man in a threadbare coat, looks like nothing, trained to be everything, leans at the fence and says nothing. He's counting. Not people. Guards. Not guards. Steps to a door that might be unbarred. He pretends to be poor, because the rich are visible. He pretends to be bored, because the interested are watched. Aunt Hester sits at home with the ribbon drawer open like a wound. She lays a red strip next to a blue strip and ties them together in a knot the matron would never approve. 2 make 1, she says to the empty room, and if the room had a spine it would shiver. She tucks the knot into her book between the pages that smell like smoke and sassafras. Return, she whispers again. Return. Miriam, at her desk, unfolds a letter slipped under the bank door at dawn, written in a hand too careful to be anything but hiding. It reads, "There is no distance between here and there when our money crosses both." No signature. No instruction. Just a line like a mirror held under her chin. She folds it back with the tenderness of a woman putting away a baby dress, and not because she thinks she will need it again. At the river, the boat finally sighs into its slip, gangplank dropping like a tongue. The captain jokes with the trader and they shake on something ordinary. Timing, crates, favors owed. Ordinary is a costume atrocity likes to wear. It fits beautifully. They load the Coffles in tours. The trader keeps a ledger in his head for this part, who looks most likely to survive the trip, who brings the best price in New Orleans, who might sweeten a bulk sale to a plantation upriver if bundled with a carpenter or a cook. He doesn't think about Dinah's stone or Hester's knot or Miriam's folded letter. He thinks about the weather. On the upper deck, a planter from the low country tells a story about twins born last year on his place. He calls them good luck. A man beside him nods like a man assessing soil. They drink something expensive and pretend that makes them tragic heroes instead of purchasers. Night comes early when you are chained. Dinah feels the river through the hull the way a woman feels breath at her neck before a whisper. She closes her eyes and lays her palm flat on the wood like it is a door to a better room. The stone is warm from her skin. She presses it into a crack and leaves it there. Messages travel. Water remembers. Below, someone starts a song that isn't really a song. It's a line carried from person to person like a bucket of fire that doesn't burn your hands because it is yours. Dinah takes a verse that Aunt Hester taught her and laces it to a verse that Josiah made up on a night the smokehouse smelled like rain. The trader shouts down the hatch for silence the way a man might scold the tide. The tide ignores him. In the morning, the riverbank changes trees and accent, language and law. The boat's shadow glides over a snag where, years ago, someone else wedged a message. It is gone now, carried to sea or snagged in a net or lodged in the memory of a fisherman who read it and never told a soul. When the boat stops to take on wood, the threadbare man is already there with a cart. He sells apples to deckhands and gossip to no one and counts the steps again. He watches the hatch that leads to the hold. He does not blink. On his left wrist, under the cuff, is a bit of red thread tied to a bit of blue. Not a ribbon. A signal. At dusk, a child up on deck laughs at a pelican diving. Every head below deck looks up as if laughter was something you could catch in your hands and keep for later. The trader, bored and restless, hums an old song his mother sang when laundry froze on the line. For a moment he is almost human. Then he remembers the price list and the moment breaks like a plate. They tie up at a dark landing with a lantern swinging like a heartbeat. The trader puts on a smile he keeps in his coat pocket. The captive men and women put on their faces too, the ones that save you from the worst of what the world thinks it can do. Everyone is dressed. The river prefers the naked truth. What walks up the gangplank is not hope. It is an arithmetic problem dressed like a man, and the answer is not freedom, not yet. But sometimes the right calculation opens a door, and sometimes the door opens onto water instead of fire. Someone whispers Dinah's name from the dock. It is a voice she doesn't know yet, saying the word like a question that expects a yes. The lantern swings. The river looks up like a witness. The ledger waits on the table in a room that smells like ink. The ribbon drawer is closed again, for now. They call it a yard, as if grass grows there. Whitewashed fence. Brick pens. A lantern hung high so buyers can see teeth and terror at the same time. On the gate, flaking paint says Johnson & Sons. The joke is the ampersand. The sons are purchased. The trader hands over a bundle of papers and a bundle of people. The clerk, thin, pale, the sort who can make cruelty look like clerical work, checks names against the ledger. Prime, likely, seasoned, increase probable. Words like tags on cages in a menagerie built for men's appetites and banks' appetites wearing each other's coats. Inside, seasoning means turning a person into a product quickly. New names, new rules, new threats. A month to learn a plantation's clock. A week to break a voice into yes and no. 3 days to forget the old path to the smokehouse and learn the new path to the ring bolt. Dinah learns the yard's geometry, how shadows fall, where a gate doesn't latch unless someone remembers, which guard likes to talk, which likes to listen, which likes to do neither. She learns the auctioneer's rhythm. The patter polishes sin until you can see your face in it. Fine girl, good hips, docile, no vices, increase assured. Each boast is a fence post in a corral surrounding the future. Men in coats discuss breeding lines with a detachment of gardeners. Her mother dropped 6 live, one says, admiring the seed and scorning the soil. Her aunt twin-bearing, another crows, as if the womb were a tree they grafted themselves. The clerk calculates a premium the way you might add a ribbon to a package. More flair, same theft. Upstairs, the office smells like spruce shavings and arithmetic. On one shelf, bills of sale tied with string. On another, insurance binders. The words all increase are underlined in 3 places on a contract written by a man who has never been inside a yard, never heard a woman cry out and bite her own hand to keep a secret intact. The threadbare man appears at the perimeter selling apples that bruise easily. He is a hinge in a system of doors. Tonight he is called Abel. Tomorrow he will be called a different biblical name. He counts the guards again. He notes a door that opens onto an alley where water runs, dark and patient. He watches a key change hands and memorizes the moment like a lock picks a song. A planter from Virginia comes down river to buy stock. He says the word lightly. He is proud of his program. He calls it rational agriculture. He is a collector of schedules. Menstrual charts and planting calendars share a drawer in his desk. He says he runs a nursery. He keeps a whip rolled tidy as a scroll. The yard man introduces him to Dinah. The planter smiles like a man test driving a carriage. You'll do, he says, to the yard man, not to Dinah. Money changes owners. People do not. At dusk, a handler brings a bucket of water. Dinah takes it slow, watching the surface shiver with each step. She sees a lantern's reflection vibrate like a star with a stutter. She remembers Josiah's stone and Aunt Hester's knot and Miriam's ink freckle and understands. Help is a braid, not a rope. You climb it differently. Abel tosses an apple too hard and it drops near the pen. The guard swears. Dinah picks it up and sees the cut, a slit no wider than a fingernail. Inside, pressed into the fruit's flesh, a twist of red and blue thread. Her teeth ache with what it means. She tucks the apple under her palate and pretends she does not like fruit. Later, when the yard sleeps and the river breathes, Dinah teases the thread free and hides it in her hem beside the stone's ghost. The apple turns brown. The night stays black. Somewhere above, the planter scribbles numbers representing babies not yet born, profits not yet minted, cruelties not yet committed, all of them counted as already his. The pen door creaks at first light. The auction bell rings. Commerce puts its hat on. Lot 9. The caller shouts. Prime Virginia girl, likely breeder, sound. The yard leans forward. The river holds still. Dinah steps into a room full of prices and chooses, within the hand's breadth she owns, where to put her fear. They drive them by wagon to a place that calls itself a farm and is actually a factory. It looks ordinary from the road. White house, 2 big barns, a nursery painted a cheerful yellow that turns sickly under clouds. The sign over the lane reads Cedar Walk. The trees look away when you pass. The rules are explained as if they were weather. Everyone contributes. Everyone is respected who respects the rules. The nursery is for the common good. The overseer says good as if he invented it. His ledger is not a ledger. It's a calendar with names squeezed between moons. The program has 12 commandments. 1. Women of prime age are assigned cabins nearest the nursery. Assigned is the plantation's synonym for taken. 2. Pairings occur by schedule, not by choice. The paper says visits. The body says a different word and speaks it without sound. 3. Rations increase with pregnancy and reduce with refusal. The overseer calls this incentive. Hester would call it by its real name if she were here. She is not. Her book is. 4. Midwives report cycles. The owner calls it science. The midwife calls it survival when she is alone and writes in a private shorthand learned from a mother who refused to let words become shackles. 5. Fancy girls are kept separate. Another barn. Another price. Another set of men who pretend their money makes them gentle. 6. Twins add a bonus. The owner calls it providence. The field hands call it hunger divided by 2. 7. Babies are weaned early. The women know what early really feels like. 8. Children are placed where numbers say they do best, meaning where they make the most. The matron ties blue ribbon after blue ribbon until her fingers dream knots. 9. Women who underperform are leased or sold down. Down means sugar, and sugar means death that takes its time. Everyone knows. No one says. 10. Men are rotated like studs. The overseer speaks their names like horse pedigrees. He never says husband. He never will. 11. Sundays belong to God, except where harvest or birth interrupts. Birth interrupts a lot. 12. Complaints are treason. The punishment is designed to show other bodies how to behave. The overseer calls it discipline. The trees look away again. Dinah learns the program's weak places. Not where the fence is low, where the logic is. A schedule so tight breaks if you pull 2 threads, time and trust. She learns which guard gambles, which clerk drinks, which stable boy believes in angels, which carpenter believes in doors. She learns the midwife's eyes and sees Aunt Hester's courage standing there in a different face. At night, the women meet in the washhouse with the steam and the lie and the sting of soap in their cuts. They speak in recipes because recipes are allowed. A pinch of this to cool a fever. A leaf to ease a monthly. A seed to keep a door from swinging when you do not wish it. The washhouse is a pharmacy disguised as chores. Dinah trades the apple thread for a scrap of paper from the midwife, 3 symbols and a map of the nursery's latches. This one fails when it rains, the midwife whispers. Water swells the wood. It dreams of opening. Miriam, 2 states away, receives a letter under her blotter. Cedar Walk carries a note with us for collateral. 1 girl called Dinah, 1 midwife, 2 children of twin birth, collars of iron, collars of paper. You may not hold the iron, you do hold the paper. Miriam stares at the sentence until the words blur. She copies a transaction the next morning and makes a tiny delay, an error so small it looks like tiredness. Delays are pebbles. Enough of them, and the river shifts. The owner hosts a supper for neighboring planters to show off the program. He speaks of rational reproduction and improving stock and the blessing of abundance. He smiles and invites the men to tour the nursery. Some demur, pretending to be shy. Others go eagerly, pretending to be scientists. After, they all drink the same bourbon and pretend they didn't hear anything cry. Abel appears at the mill pond fixing a wheel that doesn't need fixing. He arrives in daylight this time. He talks about water levels and timber rot and leaves a nail where a key will later need a friend. He hums. The tune is Hester's. The midwife hears it through a window and turns her head slowly, like a compass finding north. The first rupture is small. A latch swells in the rain and doesn't catch. A door fails to kiss the frame closed. A baby sleeps longer than expected because warm milk carried a leaf's whisper. The overseer notices nothing because numbers told him not to look there. The second rupture is scheduled to look like an accident. A cart tips at the loading shed. A crate spills. A boy runs. Not far, not fast, just enough to make 3 men chase him while a 4th man forgets to be everywhere else. Under cover of that ordinary chaos, Dinah slips a folded scrap into the chink by the nursery hearth. A drawing of the fence dip, a mark on the mill path, a time when the bell is rung for fire drills and everyone runs the wrong way on purpose. The scrap smells like lie and resolve. The stones in the hearth remember the message like the river remembers the stone. Evening. The women in the washhouse sing a tune about rain that is not about rain. One verse mentions blue thread tied to red and hands that pull together. Another says the word return out loud and pretends it means laundry. Night deepens to the color of ink. The owner sleeps in linen. The overseer sleeps with his whip hanging above the bed like a promise. The nursery's window, the one that sticks, dreams of opening. The storm arrives late, like a judge who wants everyone to wait for the verdict. Wind shoulders the barns. Rain needles the yard. The bell rope sways against its own iron tongue, hungry to cry out. In the nursery, a window swollen with water remembers its promise and loosens with a sign no one hears but the women who were listening for it all month. Now, the midwife breathes, and the word is more map than sound. Abel is at the mill shed, shirt plastered to his back, hands inside a panel he repaired last week. One lift, one twist, and the fire bell will sing. He waits for the lightning, needs thunder to swallow metal's alarm, then pulls. The bell shrieks. The yard erupts like a flock when a hawk hugs the sky. Men run toward the barns. Women move the other way, a tide in a broken mirror. Dinah slips through the nursery door with the first small cluster. Eliza with the soft-eyed newborn, Ruth with twins that breathe like timid birds, the midwife with a bundle under her dress, Hester's book, fat with years and names and recipes nobody printed and everybody needed. The overseer barrels half-dressed into the lane, whip unclasped, mouth open but drowned by rain. He herds empty air, then turns toward the nursery, then toward the bell, then toward numbers falling out of his pocket, and the indecision costs him more than a bullet ever would have. He chooses the office. Of course he does. The ledger is his lantern. Miriam's delay has already seeped inside those drawers like damp. A deputy arrived at noon with a paper humming a Northern Bank's protest. Collateral in dispute, increase contested, freeze the assets pending review. The overseer didn't read it. Hurried men never read bad news. But the seal glared at him from the desk, and now he sees it as if the thunder etched every letter with light. He fumbles for keys to rescue numbers while people spill out the back like water where the ground dips under the fence. The fence dip is not much, an inch of mercy that rain adds to, generous as it dares. Abel planted a plank there last month and pulled it yesterday. The gap is no larger than a New Hope, which is to say just big enough. Bodies flatten, slide, vanish into sawgrass and fog. The stable boy who believes in angels walks his lantern toward the wrong barn with perfect faith. The clerk who drinks drops a ring of keys into the mud. and the mud keeps it kindly, like a secret too heavy to lift tonight. Dinah counts in her head, not the old way. 1, 2, 3, but the new way. Eliza's warmth at her back, Ruth's whisper to her left, the midwife's breath steady as a metronome. Midwives learn to breathe while others were screaming. They move as if they were born in rain. Maybe they were. At the mill pond the boat is a shadow with oars for bones. Abel steadies it. 2 trips, he mutters, scanning the water's dark lid. The midwife answers with a look that says no trips, only passages. They load light and low. Babies first, then mothers, then Dinah, last as she promised herself the first night she hid a stone in her hem. Behind them, the office window frowns a yellow frown. Inside, the overseer strikes a lamp, sets it on cured pine, shuffles papers like a gambler who hears the law coming. The flame tastes an edge of twine and decides to keep going. It's only a smolder at first. A hiss. A small blue whisper at the ledger's corner. Wind presses its mouth to the gap and blows. There is no heroism here, only physics and weather, dry paper, wet night, a man who cannot be in 2 rooms at once. If justice has hands, tonight they look like rain. Abel rose. Each pull is a sentence finished. The oars knock gently in their locks like knuckles against a door that will open because it has opened before. At the far bank, a woman with a shawl and an ink freckle waits, candles shielded by her cup-head hands. She does not ask names. She touches foreheads as the children pass and tells them a story so they won't remember this part when they're old. Miriam put that freckled woman's address in a place no proctor would notice. She copied it once, tucked inside a shipping manifest behind a barrel number. Paper can hide mercy as well as malice. The second load comes back thinner and faster. The storm is already leaving, important as storms always are, bored once the break is done. The sky yawns, pinks at the edges. In the distance, the office window goes from frown to square of sudden orange. The men will say lightning did it. The men will blame God. Numbers become smoke. Names stay solid in the midwife's bundle. They move north by the alphabet of safe hands. The first night is a church with a floor that creaks in friendly keys. The next is a tanner's shed that smells like iron and old prayers. A week later, a woman in a blue dress stitches red thread into inner seams and says, "If you're stopped, say returning like you expect a door." The word keeps them until it doesn't need to. Not everybody goes. That would be a lie, and this story has had enough of those. Some women stay to tend the nursery's ghosts and the living who cannot yet run. Old bones, bad feet, boys who think they are men because a man told them so. Resistance needs keepers as much as travelers. Someone must mend the latch so it fails again, keep the recipes hot, rename fear and feed it gentler crumbs until it curls up and naps when called. Cedar Walk rebrands by summer. The new sign says Cedar Vale. The new overseer calls himself manager. The nursery is painted again, brighter. There are rumors about lightning. There is talk of a lawsuit. The bank clerk in town stares a little too long at the word increase in a damaged file and feels, for the first time, the weight of zeros when they sit on top of a cradle. He goes home and cannot eat. The owner travels upriver to borrow better luck. He finds none. Numbers that once lined up like soldiers now mill like sheep. Every ledger that burned left a hole no arithmetic can patch. He dreams, often, of a bell that rings when there is no storm. Dinah reaches a place where the river runs out of breath and turns into streets. The house there has a cellar deeper than fear and a kitchen that smells like cinnamon and ink. The woman with the freckle sets Hester's book on the table and opens it like a wound and like a window. Dinah writes for the first time not as a note to a ghost, but as a hand to a stranger in another century. She writes the rules as she learned them and the ways they break, the songs disguised as recipes, the names of those who didn't make it to the boat and those who will, later, because time sometimes loops back on itself and hands you another chance if you are stubborn enough to outlast a calendar. Years pass. The war comes with its boots and bugles and a new kind of ledger that counts bodies by different columns. Cedar Walk becomes Cedar Field, then nothing but a rising ground where the grass won't grow right. Men give speeches among ruins. Women keep cooking in washhouses and sing low because not all ghosts want to be woken at once. Sometimes, when the wind pushes rain sideways across a field where a nursery used to stand, you can hear a bell ring from no tower at all. It doesn't mean fire. It means a window opening. And somewhere, in a drawer that survived, a page still exists with 3 underlined words, with all in crease, and a finger smudge where someone who handled numbers stopped, finally, and asked what they were really holding. If this story pressed against your chest, it's because the arithmetic behind those farms wasn't just numbers. It was names: Hester, Josiah, Ruth, Eliza, Abel, Dinah, counted and discounted, priced and repriced, and yet never fully owned. The ledgers tried to turn wombs into coin purses and children into dividends. But memory is a debtor that never pays what you expect, and some nights it settles accounts with thunder. Tell someone who insists slavery was only labor that there were places designed like orchards for people, chartered like factories for bodies, insured like barns for babies not yet born. Tell them numbers do not absolve. They only accuse in a quieter font. If this episode lit a match in the dark, share it with the one person who thinks they know the Old South but has never stepped into the nursery. And before you go, add your voice below. Did the breeding program collapse because war tore the paper, or because people like Dinah and the midwife turned those ledgers into lanterns first? Do you think justice arrived that storming night, or did it keep walking, patient as a river, long after the boats were hidden? For more untold chapters, the one's official history left out because the candles guttered too soon, stay with us. Like if you care that memory keeps its receipts. Subscribe if you want the next door opened. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from and what you carry under your hem when the bell finally rings.